Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something a little different, taking a deep dive into ACCS certification,
Okay.
which, may not be something that immediately comes to mind for everyone.
Right.
But as we dig into this, you'll see why it's becoming so incredibly relevant, especially, given the state of things in today's world.
Absolutely.
And we're basing this deep dive on ACCS certification, Lindsay Jones ed.pdf. So, to start us off, maybe could you give us a little kind of a basic explanation? When people hear climate change, aviation isn't necessarily the first thing they think of.
Yeah, definitely. Most people, when they think climate change, they're thinking broader environmental impacts.
Right.
Not necessarily like the specifics of aviation,
Exactly.
but it's a huge part of it.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. What does ACCS even stand for?
So ACCS stands for Aviation Climate Change Specialist.
So we're talking about a very specific niche here. It's not just about general climate change knowledge, but really honing in on how it applies to the aviation industry. Why is that so important?
Well, for one thing, aviation is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And with the way the demand for air travel is constantly growing globally,
Right.
this is a problem that needs to be addressed. There's a lot of pressure on the industry to reduce its environmental impact.
So this is about equipping people with the knowledge to essentially try to make aviation more sustainable.
Exactly. That's the main idea. The ACCS certification shows that someone understands the intersection of climate science and aviation.
Mhm.
And I think you can see where I'm going with this. The demand for that kind of expertise is only going to increase.
Yeah.
Airlines, manufacturers, policymakers, they'll all be looking for people who can really tackle this challenge head on.
It's like almost a specialization is emerging right in front of us.
Exactly.
And this certification validates that expertise.
And this isn't just theoretical, this certification gets into the actual nitty-gritty of how climate change affects aviation from a practical standpoint.
Yeah, and from what I was reading, it seems like it gets into some pretty specific stuff, like how climate change is actually impacting, like how airplanes operate and things like that.
Right. It's not just broad concepts. It gets into things like how greenhouse gases act differently at high altitudes,
Which is where planes fly, obviously.
Exactly. And it looks at how to calculate aviation's specific contribution to climate change.
Mhm.
Evaluating things like sustainable aviation fuels and even how to make flight operations more efficient so we can reduce fuel consumption.
It sounds very hands-on, focused on solutions.
It is, absolutely. And the goal is to give people the tools, the knowledge to make a tangible difference. These are the people who will be out there making aviation more sustainable, like in a real concrete way.
Okay, so we've established that this certification is important in the grand scheme of things, but let's bring it back down to the individual level for a second.
Sure.
What are the tangible benefits for someone who decides, you know what, I'm going to go for this ACCS certification?
Well, like we were talking about, there's a growing need for people who get this, who get sustainable aviation, and that translates directly into better career prospects. Think about it. If you're an engineer designing more fuel-efficient planes, or, you're an airline manager implementing greener practices, or you're even involved in policymaking to make the whole sector more sustainable. This certification gives you a serious leg up.
It's like a green badge of honor
Exactly.
that says, hey, I'm serious about this and I have the knowledge to back it up.
It shows commitment, a real commitment to sustainability, which is, that's becoming more and more important across all industries, really.
Right. It's not just like a checkbox anymore.
No.
It's really about having the expertise to make a difference.
Exactly.
And, that brings me to something I found really interesting in the source material, a statistic that really drove home the impact of all this.
Oh, yeah.
It said that just one long-haul flight can generate the same amount of greenhouse gas emissions as an average person does with their car in a whole year.
Yeah. It's
a lot.
It really puts things into perspective. And I think it highlights, how big of a challenge this is, but also how much potential there is for solutions.
Which is a perfect segue because this certification isn't just about understanding the problems. It's about exploring those solutions.
Exactly.
We hear a lot about sustainable aviation fuels, electric planes, hydrogen-powered aircraft. It sounds so futuristic.
It does, doesn't it? Did you know that some airlines are already using sustainable fuels?
Really?
Things like, used cooking oil or agricultural waste.
Wait, so you're telling me, like, used cooking oil can power an airplane?
It's amazing, right? And these fuels can significantly reduce emissions compared to the traditional jet fuel. But that's just one example. There's also a lot of research being done on, electric and hydrogen-powered aircraft, especially for shorter flights.
So that does seem more plausible.
Yeah, quieter, cleaner, and way better for the environment.
That does feel very futuristic.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've talked about what ACCS is. We've talked about why it matters on this global scale. But before we go any further, I'm curious, who is this certification actually for? Is it like only for pilots, engineers, people directly involved in the technical side of aviation, or could anyone who's interested in sustainability pursue this?
That's a great question. And to be honest, it's one of the things that surprised me when I first really started looking into ACCS. It's designed to be accessible to a wide range of people, not just those with, a technical background.
So it's not just for the engineers and the scientists.
Not at all. Of course, people working in aviation, pilots, engineers, operational staff, they'll all find it useful. But it's equally relevant for people in policymaking, finance, law, marketing, communications, or really anyone who wants to be part of making aviation more sustainable.
So even someone like me, a podcast host with a passion for, uh, learning new things and sharing that with our listeners, could potentially get certified.
Precisely.
Wow.
It's about having a broader understanding, creating an environment where all sorts of different voices can contribute.
Okay, I'm sold. So let's take a second to recap what we've learned about ACCS so far.
Okay, so we talked about what ACCS stands for, why it's so important right now, and touched on some of the main things it covers. And we talked about the benefits of being certified, career-wise, but also the personal satisfaction of helping to make aviation greener.
And crucially, it's not limited to the tech people. This is for anyone interested in sustainable aviation, no matter what their current role is. Oh, and we can't forget that statistic. One long-haul flight, same emissions as a year's worth of driving.
Yeah, that's one that tends to stick with you.
Definitely makes you think. So knowing all of this, where do we go from here? What does this all mean in the big picture?
Well, I think it's safe to say that aviation is about to go through some massive changes.
Yeah,
The demand for sustainable solutions is only going to increase.
of course.
And with that comes the need for people who really understand climate change, and can come up with new, innovative solutions.
And that's where you, our listener, come in.
Exactly. It's about, not just watching this change happen, but actually being a part of making aviation more environmentally responsible. That's what's so exciting about it.
It's like we're at this, turning point. And this certification is what gives people the knowledge to actually steer things in a better direction. And it's not all doom and gloom, right? I mean, we touched on some pretty amazing solutions, sustainable fuels, electric planes. It's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It really is. And we've only scratched the surface. Take sustainable aviation fuels, for instance. We talked about using things like used cooking oil, but some airlines are looking into even more innovative sources like algae. Yeah, algae-based fuels. These have the potential to, drastically reduce the industry's carbon footprint.
Algae-based fuels, that's wild. The fact that we could be powering airplanes with something found in nature, it feels like something out of a sci-fi movie. What else is out there? What else are we looking at for the future?
Well, for shorter flights, electric and hydrogen-powered aircraft are getting a lot of attention.
Okay.
Can you imagine, just hopping on an electric plane for a quick trip? Quieter, cleaner, way less harmful to the environment.
It all sounds so futuristic. But are these solutions actually realistic, or are we talking, way, way down the line?
That's what makes this whole field so fascinating. While some of these technologies are still being developed, they're not as far off as you might think. There have already been test flights using sustainable aviation fuels, and there are some very real projects working on electric and hydrogen planes right now.
So it's not just a pipe dream.
Not at all.
This is actually happening. And this goes back to what we were discussing before. This certification isn't just about knowing the problem. It's about being a part of the solution.
Exactly. The ACCS certification equips individuals with the knowledge and skills to contribute to these real-world solutions. And it's not just about the technology itself. It's about the bigger picture, policy changes, developing the right infrastructure, and really changing how the whole industry operates. And these are all areas where ACCS certified professionals can have a huge impact.
So it's not just about, working in a lab, or even just on the planes themselves. There's this whole other level of influencing the industry from all these different angles.
Absolutely.
It sounds like having that deep understanding of the science behind climate change
Hmm.
combined with like the practical knowledge of how aviation works could be incredibly powerful.
It is. It's a powerful combination.
But it makes you wonder, like, where does someone with this certification even begin to make a difference? How does that actually play out in the real world?
Well, the possibilities are pretty much endless, and that's what's so exciting about it. Someone with the ACCS certification might work on things like, figuring out the best flight routes to save fuel, or developing new lighter materials for aircraft, or even advocating for policy changes that encourage sustainability within the industry.
So it's not just one specific path, there's so many avenues to explore.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that the knowledge and skills you gain through the certification, it's not limited to just aviation.
Oh, that's interesting. How so?
Think about it. The principles of sustainability, really understanding things like carbon footprints and coming up with creative solutions, these are all things that can be applied to other fields. Renewable energy, urban planning, even something like supply chain management.
So someone with this certification could potentially take that knowledge and go in a lot of different directions.
Exactly. It's like a springboard for a career that's all about addressing one of the biggest challenges we're facing today, climate change.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
Hmm.
Like what we learn in one area can often be used to solve problems in others.
Absolutely.
This has been such an insightful conversation. So as we start to wrap things up, I want to bring it back to our listener for a second.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground, what ACCS is, why it matters, and even how to get certified. But for someone who's listening right now thinking, this is all fascinating, but where do I fit into all of this? What would you say to them?
I would say that's the beauty of it. You get to decide where you fit in. The aviation industry needs passionate people, people who are ready to challenge the way things have always been done, and people who are ready to be a part of the solution. Whether you already work in aviation or are thinking about it, this certification can help you make a real difference.
It's like, that saying, be the change.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's not just about like wishing for a greener future for aviation. It's about actually getting the knowledge and tools to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes beyond just aviation. You can take that understanding of climate change, sustainable practices, that innovative mindset, and apply it anywhere, really. Imagine being able to look at a supply chain and understand its carbon footprint, or advocate for greener policies in your community, or even just make more informed decisions as a consumer.
It's like this certification kind of like opens up a whole new way of seeing things,
It
like
does.
a new lens through which to view the world and the challenges we're facing. And, knowing that you can be a part of the solution, that's empowering.
It really is. It's about realizing that we all have a role to play here. We're all in this together, and the more people who are informed, the more people who are, actively engaged, the better chance we have of actually creating a more sustainable future.
That's a great point. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the ACCS certification, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. This has been about so much more than just, one specific certification. It's about understanding how our choices make a difference. It's about embracing new ideas and new technologies. And it's about realizing that we all have the power to shape the future.
If this conversation has got you thinking, if it's, made you see aviation and climate change in a new light, then we've done our job.
Exactly. We hope you've enjoyed this journey with us and that you're walking away feeling, more informed, maybe even a little inspired and ready to make a difference. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.